The old train rumbled along the tracks, its wheels screeching in protest as it climbed up the steep incline. Emily sat alone in her seat, staring out at the passing landscape through a haze of rain-soaked windows. She had been traveling for hours, and was starting to feel anxious. As she gazed into the distance, Emily noticed something peculiar. There seemed to be someone sitting across from her, but whenever she turned to look directly at them, they were gone. At first, she thought it might have been a trick of the light or her own fatigue playing tricks on her mind. But as the minutes ticked by and the person reappeared every few seconds, Emily began to feel an unsettling sense of unease. She tried to focus on something else, the rhythmic motion of the train's wheels, perhaps, or the sound of the rain pattering against the windows. But no matter how hard she concentrated, her eyes kept drifting back to the mysterious figure across from her. And each time they reappeared, their presence seemed more solid, more real. As the train hurtled towards its destination, Emily felt a creeping sense of dread that had nothing to do with the approaching station or any external threat. It was as if she was being watched by an unseen force, one that didn't need words or sounds to communicate. It simply existed, silently observing her every move. And when the train finally pulled into its final stop, Emily knew that something terrible would be waiting for her at the end of the journey. The silent passenger had been with her all along, and now she was ready to board a new destination, forever. The old train rumbled through the countryside, its wooden carriages creaking and groaning with each passing mile. Emily sat alone in her seat, lost in thought as she stared out at the rolling hills below. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the landscape, a figure appeared beside her. At first, Emily didn't notice it was there, just that someone had shifted into the adjacent seat next to hers. But when she turned to glance over, she saw him, a man with piercing blue eyes and jet black hair, his face expressionless as he gazed out at the passing scenery. Emily felt a shiver run down her spine as their eyes met for the first time. She tried to turn away, but the stranger's gaze held hers fast, drawing her in like a moth to flame. The train rumbled on, and Emily found herself unable to look away from this silent passenger, though she couldn't shake the feeling that he was watching her with an intensity that bordered on malevolence. As night began to fall, casting the carriage into darkness, Emily's fear turned to panic. She tried to get up and leave, but a strange compulsion held her in place. The stranger didn't move or speak, yet she could sense his presence all around her, like an unseen force that was slowly closing in for the kill. And when the train finally pulled into its final destination, Emily knew she had made one terrible mistake, getting on this journey with a silent passenger who would never let her off again. The old train rumbled along the deserted tracks, its wheels screeching in protest as it carried its sole passenger from station to station. Emily had always been fascinated by trains and had spent countless hours studying their mechanics and history. She was a keen observer of human behavior too, often noticing subtle cues that others missed. As she sat alone on her seat, lost in thought, the train suddenly lurched forward, throwing her off balance. The sudden jolt made Emily's heart skip a beat as she clutched onto the armrests to steady herself. She looked around frantically for any sign of what had caused this movement, but saw nothing out of the ordinary. That was when it started, an unsettling feeling that someone was sitting next to her, their presence marked by a faint scent of lavender and old books. Emily's skin prickled with unease as she turned to face the empty seat beside her. She scanned the surrounding area frantically for any sign of movement or life, but saw nothing. As the train continued on its journey, Emily became increasingly agitated, convinced that someone was sitting next to her, a presence so silent and unobtrusive it had almost become invisible. The air seemed thick with an unseen force as she strained to hear even the faintest whisper from this phantom passenger. And then, just when she thought things couldn't get any worse, Emily heard it, a soft, raspy voice that whispered her name in the darkness of the train car.